Most candidates don't fail because they don't know answers. They fail because they don't understand the question. In this video, we are going to cover 20 plus questions that separate selected candidates from the rejected ones. If you haven't watched part 1, go check that first because this builds on the fundamentals. Knowing what a BA is, what BRD, FRD use cases and basic agile terms are. Let's jump into the next layer, the questions that look simple but test your real thinking. And if you are serious about getting into a business analyst role, subscribe now because this is a complete interview series and missing even one part can cost you opportunities. Let's get into part 2. How do you prioritize requirements? This is one of the first questions where your answer can show whether you think strategically. The interviewer isn't just checking if you can list requirements, they want to know if you can decide what matters most and why. Common mistake candidates make: saying I prioritize based on importance. It's too vague. What is importance? Who decides? Not mentioning a framework like Moscow or any structured method. Ignoring stakeholders and their inputs. The right way to answer: I prioritize requirements based on business value, urgency, and impact, using techniques like Moscow or through stakeholder discussions. And a pro tip: use words like business value, impact, urgency, stakeholder alignment when you speak. It shows the interviewer that you are not just following instructions, you understand how priorities affect project outcomes. What is requirement elicitation? Requirement elicitation is more than just gathering information. It's about actively extracting the right requirements from the stakeholders. Mistake most people make: they say, I gather requirements. Again, too basic. They don't mention techniques. Here's a strong answer. Requirement elicitation is the process of extracting requirements from stakeholders using interviews, workshops, observations, and brainstorming. Here's a pro tip. Always add something like I choose the technique based on stakeholder type and project context. It shows practical experience. How do you handle unclear requirements? This one tests your problem solving and communication skills. Mistakes: assuming what stakeholders meant. Saying I asked once and proceed shows weak validation. Here's the right answer. I clarify unclear requirements through stakeholder discussions, ask probing questions, and validate my understanding before documenting them. Pro tip: say I never assume, I validate to signal a disciplined approach. What is a traceability matrix? RTM. Here, the interviewer is checking if you ensure requirements are actually delivered, not just documented. Mistakes: only giving the definition. It's a matrix without context, not mentioning its purpose. Here's the right way to answer. RTM maps requirements to test cases to ensure all requirements are covered and nothing is missed. Here's a bonus point. Add, it also helps during impact analysis if requirements changes. This shows you think beyond documentation. Difference between BRD and FRD. Already discussed in part 1. This is a common trap. Many candidates confuse these two documents. Here's the right explanation. BRD focuses on business needs, goals, and expectations and is meant for stakeholders. FRD translates business requirements into detailed functional specifications for the development team. Here's a pro tip. Emphasize the audience difference. BRD are stakeholders. FRD are for developers. This simple distinction often impresses interviewers. What technique do you use for requirement gathering? Here, the interviewer wants to know if you have actually practiced these techniques, not just read about them. Mistakes: only naming one or two techniques, no context can sound memorized. Right answer: I use interviews, workshops, brainstorming, observation, and document analysis depending on the stakeholder and project type. Here's a pro tip. Mention context. Workshops are especially useful when multiple stakeholders are involved. Adds credibility. Use case versus user story. Many candidates mix this up. This is about agile versus traditional documentation clarity. Here's a strong answer. Use cases provide step-by-step detailed interaction between users and systems. User stories are short, user-focused requirements, usually in agile. Here's a pro tip. Say use cases are detailed and user stories are lightweight. Keep it simple and precise. How do you ensure requirement quality? Attention to detail matters. Interviewers want to see that you don't just document, you ensure quality. Mistakes: saying I write clearly, too vague, no measurable criteria. Here's a strong answer. I ensure requirements are clear, complete, consistent, and testable. I conduct reviews and validations to confirm. Here are some keywords to sprinkle: clear, testable, unambiguous. What is stakeholder analysis? Stakeholder analysis is critical for managing expectations. Mistakes: defining only stakeholders, ignoring analysis of influence or interest. Here's the right answer. Stakeholder analysis involves identifying stakeholders, understanding their influence and interest, and managing communication accordingly. Pro tip: mention high power versus low power stakeholders to show nuanced understanding. What is impact analysis? This is about change handling. Mistakes: saying checking impact. Too weak. Here's the right answer. Impact analysis evaluates how a change affects requirements, systems, and stakeholder before implementation. Pro tip: add this helps prevent unexpected issues. Now pause for a second. If you are noticing this, these questions are not difficult, but the way you answer them decides selection or rejection. Most candidates fail because they don't structure their answer with context, example, and impact. Let's continue. The next set is even more critical. What is scope creep? Scope creep is a silent killer in projects. Mistakes: not mentioning how to control it. Here's the right answer. Scope creep is uncontrolled addition of requirements without approval, impacting timeline and cost. I control it through a structured change management process. What is change management? Mistakes: too theoretical. Here's the right answer. Change management is a structured process to evaluate, approve, and implement changes in project scope. Here's a pro tip. Mention impact analysis and approval. This shows practical approach. What is a business process? Core BA concept. Mistake: generic answers. Here's the right way to answer. A business process is a sequence of steps performed to achieve a specific business goal. Example: order processing from purchase to delivery. What is as is versus to be? Test process improvement thinking. Here's the correct answer. As is the current process. To be is the improved future process. Gap analysis connects both. Functional decomposition. This shows analytical skills. Here's the right way to answer. Breaking down a complex system into smaller, manageable components to understand it better. Pro tip: helps in detailed analysis and identifying dependencies. Prototype. Tests visualization skills. A prototype is an early model to visualize and validate requirements. Here's a pro tip. Reduces misunderstandings early in the project. Data analysis in BA. Analytical capability matters. Right answer. Data analysis involves examining data to identify trends and insights that support decision making. Bonus: mention tools like Excel, SQL. Shows hands-on skills. Feasibility analysis. Tests business thinking. Right way to answer. Evaluates if a solution is viable technically, financially, and operationally. KPI versus metric. Many candidates confuse this. Right answer. Metrics measures performance. KPIs are critical metrics aligned with business objectives. Here's a pro tip. All KPIs are metrics, but not all metrics are KPIs. How do you communicate with stakeholders? Real world skill test. Mistakes: generic answer. Here's the right way to answer. I communicate through meetings, emails, and documentations while tailoring communication based on stakeholder type. I ensure clarity and regular updates. If you have reached this point, you're already ahead of most candidates. But here's the reality. Watching interview questions is not enough. If you really want to get selected, you need to understand how all of this works in a real project. That's exactly why I created a full business analyst project series, where I show up step by step how a real BA works, from requirement gathering to delivery. And if you want structured, in-depth preparation, I've also created a complete Udemy course where everything is explained in a practical, no-fluff way, especially for cracking BA roles. Links are in the description. Go check them out after this video. Now don't stop here, because the next part of this series is where most candidates completely break. In part 3, I'm going to cover scenario-based interview questions, the ones where interviewers test your real experience, your decision making, and how you handle real project situations. This is where 90% of candidates fail. So stay hooked, part 3 is coming next. And if you're serious about becoming a business analyst, subscribe and follow the full series step by step. I'll see you in the next one.